Thanks, Brandon. I've now got to live up to that introduction, so let's see how we go. So yeah, as per that introduction and as hinted, my name is Alex McNabb, or Alex McNabb Lundbeck for my full name, and I am the head of corporate social media for Maersk. And we split our social media between corporate and commercial. So that's hence the corporate social media versus commercial social media, which does more with the marketing. So a little bit about me. Now, if anybody can find the tenuous link to some of the graphics that you may well see in this presentation, then there's a beer on me in the bar at the end of the day. I tested this out before I arrived in California, and thinking that everybody would know the tenuous link of this image. It turns out nobody does. So it's clearly just me, but anyway. So as I said, I have worked across a whole range of industries and now heading up social media channels for Maersk. Quick show of hands who has heard or knows of Maersk. There's a couple of people who are exempt from answering, but a couple of colleagues who are exempt from asking. But most people have heard of Maersk, even if they don't know exactly what they are. And I'll go into a little bit details about what that means for our digital footprint. I want to start with a little story, if I may. Before I worked at Downing Street, as Brandon mentioned, and before I worked at Maersk, I started my career, if you like, working for the BBC, and I worked for a late-night chat show as a runner. I was trying to kind of think of stories that could link back to this employee advocacy system, and I remember one particular moment, and one of my jobs as a runner was at the end of the show, when all of the guests were going home. My job was to make sure that they at least got into their cars, got into their limos, whatever it was that they were being transported out of, in a safe manner and got off the premises. And I remember one particular instance when usually they just had their cars waiting and it was all pretty straightforward. But one young and upcoming chap, Mr. James Corden, who I think in America now, most people who know who James Corden is, probably a few years ago, people have had no idea who he is. But he was a young and upcoming guy on the BBC, and he didn't have a fancy car to take him home. He was just going to hail a cab. And I was waiting for him outside the BBC stage door. And it was at that point that a few teenagers came up to us who had been waiting for some time with notepads in their hands. Now, knowing exactly what they wanted, they were going to be asking for an autograph from Mr. James Corden. Autographs, some people might remember those. It was before selfies and Instagram, right? So that's what they wanted. And I stepped back and let James to either accept or decline the offer. He accepted, which was fine. And then they approached me and said, "Can we have your autograph?" Now, I hope there's no professors of ethics in the audience here kind of judging me as to what my response was, because I had several options, right? I could say, "I think you've got the wrong person." I could pretend to be someone famous and sign it anyway. I think you'll guess what I did. So I signed it anyway. I took my 15 minutes of fame, right? 15 seconds of fame, let's put it like that. I pretended what it was like to be famous, signed away the autograph. And then I kind of had a little bit of guilt. So I said, after I'd signed it, "Who do you think I am? Who do you think I look like?" In a kind of jokey fashion. And they said, "Well, nobody, but you're wearing a BBC security badge. So we know that you work at the BBC, we'd like your autograph." And that was the first moment. Thinking back now, at the time, I just thought, "Oh, great, someone wants my autograph. I must look like someone famous." Maybe that was just a line. But looking back now, I realized that that was the first evidence to me that employee advocacy works. People don't connect with brands, they connect with people who work at those brands. And this is an example, and this is probably a little bit outdated now, and there are millions of other examples as well as to why people connect with people behind brands rather than the brands themselves. And if you look at someone like Richard Branson, he's a brand in his own right. Virgin is not who people are connecting with. It's Richard Branson. And there's lots of other examples with that. People engage with people. They don't connect with brands. I'm going to go and talk a little bit about how we took that concept into an employee advocacy program in a little bit. But first, to talk to you a little bit about Maersk, in an overshot, global company, of course, As mentioned, I think at the beginning, that you would have heard, accountable for almost 25% of all global trade. More importantly, 88,000 employees currently work at Maersk. That is a huge potential when we're starting to talk about employee advocacy and talking about getting our messages out using our employees as storytellers. A little overview of our digital footprint, and we span 5 kind of main channels as well as some regional brands as well. Maersk, our kind of main account, our corporate account, as well as our kind of Maersk line account, since they've merged. Damco, APM Terminals, which are the ports, Svitzer, which are our tugs, and Maersk Container Industry, which are the containers, obviously. 5 million people are following us across all of our social networks. And a recent survey, I say recent, about a year ago, and we're due to do another one, a survey of our social media followers said that 73% said that social media improves their overall perception of what Maersk is all about. So again, huge potential in our social media channels, and if we can kind of capitalize on that even more, then all the better. So when we had that thought, when we wanted to start an employee advocacy program, we wanted to do it because it tapped in, it was a core part of what our digital strategy was. This is a very brief one-pager, not even that, one slider of our digital strategy, where it talks about capitalizing, connecting, and communicating. I can go on a lot more detail about our full digital strategy, but the key one is activating employees. And we wanted to make sure that we activated our employees on social media. And we didn't really know how to do that when we devised the digital strategy. We were going to encourage people to use social media. We were going to encourage people to share a little bit. But we didn't really know how to tap into it until we had the concept of employee advocacy. And that's when it really came into its own. So we decided to run a pilot, and it was all signed off. It's an employee advocacy program. We chose a partner. We chose LinkedIn Elevate as our partner because we knew that a lot of our employees, a quarter of our employees, were already on LinkedIn, so that was a natural fit for us. And we had it all ready to go, and we were going to roll out a 6-month pilot. This was in roughly about about just the beginning of 2017. We were due to roll it out, and we'd planned it all, and then we were just about to hit the go button at the beginning of June. And then something crazy happened. No one could have predicted. We got hit by the world's biggest cyber attack in history. And on the 26th of June, pretty much everything shut down. And as you can imagine, me working in the comms department, me working in the branding department, we had slightly bigger fish to fry than worrying about a rollout of an employee advocacy program. Trying to talk to the executive team about signing off on an employee advocacy program the day after the world's biggest cyber attack on history that crippled all of our things and cost us billions of dollars, probably not the best time, right? So we put it on hold for a little bit, and eventually we kind of kick-started the pilot about a year ago in the spring of 2018, spring last year, and we rolled it out as a pilot for 6 months and have since rolled it out to all of our employees. We started with a sample size of 1,000 employees to really test the waters, see whether it was something that was going to work. And we started out with 2 key objectives, and they were very vague objectives. Now, there are going to be lots of people in the room who are going to say that objectives need to be smart. You need to know exactly what you're going to bring out. You need to kind of have precise aims and objectives that need to know your audience and insight and everything else. I'm sorry to say we did not do any of that. We had 2 objectives that we wanted to try and see if we could create potential sales leads by using our workforce. And we also wanted to engage our employees in their enhanced social media activity. How? No idea. But our concept was just do it. We took a line from one of our key clients, Nike, and said, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just roll with this. Let's just see what happens. We'll do a pilot. We'll do a small-scale pilot. We'll negotiate with LinkedIn Elevate. That's what we want to do. And let's see what happens, which is exactly what we did. And the reason being, and kind of the key insights that we had to offer when we went to the executive team, when we went to others to sort of say, this is why we want to do this, and this is why we want to do this for the employees, not just for the company, but we want to do this for the employees as well, is that people who are on employee advocacy programs, or people who I'll change that slightly. People who share content regularly, and that's what this is all about. This is about sharing regular content, whatever that may be, and we'll get into what kind of content in a little bit. But people who share regularly will grow their networks 3 times faster. They'll get 6 times more profile views, and they share other content, not just on the platform that you're talking about, but they share other content 5 times than they did before. Also, without going into details about social media analytics, actually when you share more often, you get more engagement, you get more reach, because that's how algorithms work. They tap into how much you share, and as a result, all your subsequent posts will reach. In brief, there's lots more details to algorithms than that, which would be an entire another presentation. So these were our kind of core headlines that we wanted to go to the exec board to get signed off, that we went to market with. So then how did we make it work? We've got these 1,000 people. We selected those. LinkedIn gave us the insights. So they were the ones who were able to say, these are your top 1,000 people on LinkedIn who are very active, who are very keen to be sharing content. They share a lot of Maersk content, but they also share lots of other content. LinkedIn gave us those insights, and we picked 700 of those people, and then we reserved sort of 300 or so seats or places on that 1,000 trial just for salespeople. So that once we had rolled it out to ordinary employees, people who are going to be very active and endorse our program, then it was at that point that we also wanted to reserve some seats to say, actually, maybe this can work in a sales platform as well. Maybe that's our salespeople who could be reaching out directly to customers, directly to stakeholders, and actually generate those leads. That first objective that I showed you on our very short and brief objective list. And then we needed to make it work. Now, some of that might be a bit small, so apologies if it is too small that you can read it. But it was all about kind of finding all of the 3 different types of content that there might be. Stuff that interests you, and that could be literally anything, but stuff that's just going to interest to you, and I'm sure lots of people will see stuff in your own personal feeds that is only interesting to you, but is not interested to your networks and is not interested in terms of professional networks, and it's not anything to do with the brands that you're sharing either. Then there's the content that is generally interesting to both you and your professional network. And then there's the corporate content that you might be sharing anyway, just because you kind of feel like you should. Or those people who are working in social media, they definitely feel like they should, because it helps all of our KPIs, right? So that's the 3 types of content. And we wanted to try and tap into that middle ground, that sweet spot that you hear so much about, and we've already heard a lot about people trying to find what that sweet spot is. And we wanted to do that with our content as well. We wanted to find content that is of great interest to both you, the company, and the professional network. And if you can get that right, and you can put that into your content mix, and you can push that onto your employee advocacy program for people to share out, that's when you're going to get the most follow-through, that's when you're going to get the most engagement rate, and that's when you're going to get the most shares. Sticking with content, obviously we had a lot of support from LinkedIn. LinkedIn Elevate was our chosen employee advocacy partner, and we had a lot of advice and guidance in terms of analytics and insights as to what kind of content that we should be sharing and how we should be sharing it. They have, and they still live by, this 3-2-1 rule, and that is 3 pieces of content should be smart content, 2 pieces should be proud content, and 1 piece then should be successful content. And essentially what that is saying is that 1 piece out of 6 should be about very kind of hard sell, all about your brand, something about your product, something about your services that you can offer, something that is very salesy, if you like. And 2 pieces out of that 6 should be proud content. So that might be something about your industry. That might be something that the company is doing, but it's not something you can buy. It might be a sustainability program. It might be that you've donated thousands of pounds to a charity. It might be that you're doing something great for your employees. But it's proud content to do with your brand, kind of brand awareness, if you like. And then smart content, which is nothing really to do with the industry or the brand, but is more the kind of stuff that you see on LinkedIn all the time. It is your Richard Branson will read 3 books before 4 a.m. and that's why he's so successful. Or Elon Musk swears by this breakfast and black coffee every morning and that's why he's so successful. Those kind of articles that you see on LinkedIn so much, that's the kind of content that actually people engage with. And 3 3 out of 6 should be that kind of content. Now, I'm generalizing for comic effect, but sometimes it could just be about management guidance or time management or how to plan your day or whatever it may be that we see so many articles about. That's the kind of content that I mean for that smart content. We took that insight, we took that guidance from LinkedIn and said, that's good. It's not exactly going to work for us like that. We're going to come up with our own formula, which we did. We simplified it a little bit. So rather than 3, 2, 1, we simplified it into thirds. So a third of our content would be smart business. That is the management stuff. That's the time management stuff. That's about how you do business. That's how you organize your emails. That's when you do your admin, whatever it may be. Smart business content. A third then should be about our industry. In this case, the logistics industry, although you can convert that to whatever industry that you might be working in. And then a third of that content would be about Maersk. So anything to do with our brand, our services, directly what we're doing. That's the content that we would have. So that would combine, from the previous one, that would combine both the proud content and the content about your brand in one. So that Maersk content could be about Maersk donating to a charity, or it could be about that Maersk has launched a new product. But one way or another, a third of that content is going to fit into that. Moving on to a little bit about how we measure. And we've heard so much, and I've heard kind of networking in the break as well about people kind of talking about the importance of data. And for us, it was all about the data. And one of the things that led us to partner with LinkedIn was not just about the fact that a quarter of our employees were on LinkedIn, which was a big driver, but also, as a result of that, how much insight LinkedIn could give us. LinkedIn give us a certain amount of stuff. You know how many likes you get, you know how many shares you've got. You can have a little idea of potential reach based on reshares and kind of second degree connections. But what you don't get is a breakdown of who that people is. You don't know whether they are employees versus non-employees. They don't know what job titles they have if they're non-employees or if they are employees. You don't know the kind of the full virality of engagement. You don't understand whether is it third, fourth connections even that are engaging with your content, and that's when you can get really the huge cut through. But you can also find out all of the other analytics that LinkedIn has in terms of job posts. If you have a job post on your company page and you have content that's about a job offer, you can link it through, and you can even link it through to virtually working out whether that person has gone through and applied. So you can find out whether you're generating jobs out of that. Maersk has about 10,000 jobs that it has to fill every single year. And so for us, LinkedIn is a huge opportunity for us to try and drive roles and job roles. And that number is just increasing with digitalization as well. So versus what you can get in platform or versus LinkedIn's API and what they will give us as part of Elevate was hugely potential. And we really knew that we could capitalize on that. So final points. How did it do? Really well, you'll be pleased to know. I could stand up here and say it was a complete disaster and this entire talk is complete rubbish. But thankfully, I can say that it was an amazing success. We had no idea it was going to be as successful as this. That's why we did it as such a small-scale trial. But we had a little over, so we were a little bit over our cap of 1,000. And we had, after 3 months, we had 1,026 people who were using the platform and sharing regularly. But it was the big numbers of engagement and reach that interested us. 5.8 million audience reach. So this is just on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So this is across all channels. 61,000 engagements over the course of those 3 months. Again, that's over all channels. And then engagement rate on LinkedIn only. That's 8.6% engagement rate. They kind of set an industry benchmark for employee advocacy engagement at 6.5%. So that was kind of what our benchmark was, because we were kind of looking at what there are other organizations that use LinkedIn Elevate as well. And it was great to see that we were above that. But even without that benchmark, I'm sure that anybody who knows anything about analytics, when you think about engagement rate, usually a good social media campaign might get 2% engagement rate. Maybe you're lucky enough to have 3% engagement rate. Through employee advocacy, you're close to 9% engagement rate. And then return on investment, for those who are still interested in that, and as to kind of what it actually means in terms of advertising value, $155,000, of earned media value from the publicity, if you like, but from the shares, from the reach, and everything else that we got. So basically, the amount that we put in, the resources that we put in from staffing, and also kind of what we obviously needed to pay for the LinkedIn Elevate platform was instantly covered in just the first 3 months. That was a lot of numbers. I wanted to really simplify it, and the reason why we started it in the first place was that we really wanted to show the impact of this people engaging with people and not people engaging with brands. And this is when we broke it down. Our company page gets about 4% engagement rate, which before we started employee advocacy, we thought was pretty good. We thought that that was a pretty good statistic. I said that people are impressed when they get 2 or 3% engagement rate. So we thought 4% was amazing until we started employee advocacy. 11% engagement rate, as I said. Nearly 20 million impressions, if I round up quite a lot. And then 10,000 shares as well. So huge potential of employee advocacy. And I think I would finalize it by saying that the reason why it's successful is that people engaging with people, and how you can really capitalize on your workforce to communicate your messages, whether you have 1,000, 100 even employees, or whether you have 88,000. The potential is huge if you can just tap into it in the right way.